Hey folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, can we move on from the Lions finally? Or can we move them to the back of the show? Because we have another team in town, apparently inspired by the Lions. I guess the Tigers will be too. AJ Hinch said that he is taking inspiration from the Lions. Helene St. James is in here to tell us how much the Red Wings have taken inspiration from the Lions. But let's talk about the Lions in the second part of the show, because we got a hockey team in town, man. 6 in a row for the first time under Steve Yzerman. Firmly in the first wild card spot in the Eastern Division. They're only a few points out of actually getting out of the wild card spot, right? I mean, that's in play if they keep this up for sure and actually making the playoffs. So, not that the wild card at the playoffs, but thanks for joining us, Helene St. James. What is happening?
It's really just been incredible to see since the calendar page turned to 2024. The Wings, everything has been going right for them. Alex Lyon has been the main guy in goal. He's been terrific, but James Reimer has come in and won when he's been needed. So really, so much of it, what we're seeing is all the moves that Steve Yzerman made since last summer are just paying off in spades, especially, again, going back to Alex Lyon. But, Patrick Kane, I don't know that anybody dared hope he would contribute to the extent that he has. He's a game changer for them, They were losing Sunday in Chicago, and he sets up the tying goal and then scores in overtime. It was perfect.
Tell us more about Kane, because, I haven't been around him that much, but he's really impressed me as far as he reminds me of the old school Wings when they were rolling, and the leadership and the calmness and the sense of sort of maturity and confidence in who he is. It really feels like a leader in that dressing room to me. But is there something more to him? Is there an influence that he's imparting beyond just what he's doing on the ice for the team?
I think absolutely, leadership in the room. And it can be tough. You're joining a team already a third of the way into the season, and, you don't want to step on anybody's toes in the locker room. But I think just it was such a natural fit for him. He was such a leader in Chicago, and he's been around for a long time. And the other thing is he's just an incredibly intelligent player. You see him making plays out there sometimes. There's never any rush to get rid of the puck or anything. He's so smart, and I think that just translates into every impact he has. But again, just he's turned 35 right before he signed. He hadn't played in 6 months. He'd had invasive hip surgery, and comes back and immediately starts scoring. Misses a couple of weeks with an injury not related to that hip surgery, and comes back. And again, he's above a point a game. He will probably easily reach 20 goals before the season is over, and he'll have played half a season. So I think, but just the leadership, players, the other players know this is a guy who's won 3 Stanley Cups. He's going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame 3 years after he retires.
It's the best U.S.-born player, probably, right? He or Madonna, probably in that shortlist conversation.
And Chris Chelios. There's 3 of them.
No, Chelios is not the best U.S.
Defenseman. Pretty
defenseman.
good.
I'll give you defenseman.
Best U.S.-born player with the most high-profile friends. How about that? So yeah, Patrick Kane, and it's funny, I was talking to somebody in Steve's inner circle last night about trade deadlines coming up next week. And I said, who you should put on your list is Cindy Crawford. Did you guys see her in Chicago? She scored from center ice. She's a veteran. She's tall. So
can we get Bob Bugner to scout her a little bit? Do you think? Is he?
Yeah. How he's her contemporary. How do you live through the 80s and 90s in North America and not know who Cindy Crawford is?
Was that real? Do you think they were just giving him a hard time that he didn't recognize her at first? Because that's just, you have to have lived under a rock or something.
Yeah, I haven't been able to ask him, because that was exactly, how do you, and she still looks like Cindy Crawford, right? So that just...
Yeah, but we're getting up there. How many people would know who his friends are, right? I remember about 20 years ago, I was working on this long takeout on Yzerman, and I was in L.A., I want to say wherever the Kings were playing at that time, and I was in the locker room after the game, and in walked John Cusack, Jeremy Piven, and John McEnroe. They all went straight to Chelios. That was his crew. People know McEnroe still, but does anybody know that's 30 or under and know Jeremy Piven or even John Cusack at this point? So John Cusack was
John
a big star.
McEnroe. Yeah, John McEnroe was there Sunday as well. So, well,
Bugner's 52. Crawford's 58. He should know who she is. I mean,
right?
Come on.
But his celebrity friends are starting to age out. That's
who knows who she
culture. That's all I'm saying.
I'll bet you any money Dan Campbell knows who she is.
Well, according to Carlos, Dan Campbell knows everything. But we're waiting to talk about the Lions. Although it is interesting, a little bit know that the Lions run to hear other coaches in town and players in town sort of talk about their run and wanting to kind of jump onto that juice a little bit.
Well, it hasn't happened in a while, right? I mean, it was just so electrifying when they were in the playoffs, in the whole city embracing it. So I think that's what makes it a little bit, or adds to why people were so delirious about it. And now, it'll be the first time in 8 years the Wings advancing to the playoffs. And to your point, they're 2 points behind Toronto for third in the Atlantic Division. So they've just been. It was interesting to me. They were just out west and they lost in Edmonton and Vancouver. And I thought, okay, is this, are they going to dip a little here? But then they go into Calgary and win 5-0. They go to Seattle and win, come home and keep winning, go to Chicago on a very emotional. Chicago, the Blackhawks are where they are, near the bottom of the standings. But it was an emotional day with Chelios retiring, having his number retired, and Patrick Kane returning. But the Wings still keep finding a way. Washington is desperately trying to work their way into the playoff picture. They're not out of it, and every time the Capitals came within a goal or so, the Wings immediately turned around and scored once or twice. So they've just, they're just really, really rolling right now at a great time for them.
So, the thing that, Shawn and I are going to get into this later, the difference of the small differences that players or decisions can make, right? And I think what we've seen, and I think you wrote about this recently, is, the maybe they don't need to make the Wings don't need to make a trade or upgrade at the trade deadline, because Patrick Kane has basically been the difference maker, a big difference maker since November. But you see, what Yzerman's gotten everything right, pretty much, like with DeBrincat, Alex Lyon. Are they missing something to help them when they get to the playoffs? Are they on the level? They're not going to play the Western Conference, but I'm just talking when they played Vancouver, when they played Edmonton, they just didn't seem the same league as those teams. And I know they've beaten Vancouver, obviously that overtime game and all that, but it seems like that's the difference. Like right now, they're good enough to get into the playoffs, but are they going to be able to advance in the playoffs and win? I know they've been talking about we can win a 7-game series against anybody, whatever. But don't you need that extra little help? Where is it in the margins? Where can they find somebody, a better? They need maybe a stronger defense, stay-at-home defenseman, whatever it might be. What do you think? Where could they use the most help if they're going to make a decision to upgrade?
Well, Derek Lalonde really likes that second pairing on defense of Sherratt and Jeff Petrie. So I just think if you're going to make a splash, it costs something. So to me, I don't think the Wings yet are in position to give up a first-round draft pick. Noah Hannafin in Calgary, the asking price is a first-round pick, a top prospect, and a player who can play right now. That's a lot to give up, and they'd have to turn around and probably sign him for 8 years to make it worthwhile. So that's a risk to make that kind of move. And I don't see why they would make a small move. You have Robbie Fabry and Daniel Sprong playing on your fourth line. Daniel Sprong is I think 3 or 4 goals from reaching 20. Robbie Fabry, same thing. He's those are terrific scores to have on your fourth line. You saw last night, Joe Veleno had a terrific game. He's playing on the third line right now. You have so much scoring on every line that I don't know what move you would make that would, strengthen you there without costing too much in return. In goal, they're still hoping Ville Husso is going to be able to come back before the end of the regular season. But you have Alex Lyon, who was probably the most important signing Steve made last year, because if you don't have him, if you don't have goaltending, it doesn't matter how much you can score. And on defense, again, if they're going to make a play for somebody who is a significant defenseman, it's going to cost something. And if you're just looking at depth, I mean, you already have Justin Hall sitting as your seventh defenseman. You know, he's a good veteran, so you already have that, and you have Edmondson in the minors for that matter. So I just, unless Steve does something big, you know, I just don't see, they really don't need any kind of depth move at the trade deadline, barring an injury, you know, before March 8th. You know, and if you're Steve Yzerman, probably also looking at this team, why would you want to mess with his chemistry? I mean, they're really, you know, they have something going. Why would you disrupt that?
I mean, what do you think, Carlos? Would you like to see him go out and get a defenseman, get somebody with a bit of attitude, some physicality, not an enforcer type, but just kind of a menace in a way? Would you like to see him ship off some assets, future assets, with a relatively young team?
I think that they need help defensively. I mean, you know, they're still not super solid, you know, with your traditional defense. And I know what you're saying, Helene, in the second pairing. You know, Petrie is that more, you know, stay-at-home guy. Sherrod, I mean, all these guys, they're all contributing. Is there one guy who's going to get them, you know, make a big difference for them? And I mean, if I'm Yzerman, I'd probably let it ride. You know, hey, we're good enough to make the playoffs. Why give up assets? And you shouldn't really, because this is not their year in all likelihood of, you know, getting to the Eastern Conference Finals or whatever. If they win a playoff series, you know, I mean, they're almost certainly probably going to have to go on the road anyway at the beginning. But if they win one, great. But if they don't, that's probably where they are. But it just seems like that's the one place. Yeah, offensively, they're stacked. How many guys are in double digit scoring right now? You know, I mean, I looked up the summary of the day. Fabry has 15 goals. How does Robbie Fabry, like, where did he get 15 goals from? You know, like, that seems to came out of, and he's a good player. But Beleno also is like 11 goal. You know, I mean, they're loaded. But I don't think, you know, Simon Edvinsson, I don't think he's going to, as a rookie, he's going to be really doing much for you coming into the playoffs if you need him. And again, that would probably be a depth guy. But goalie is another concern, right? If something happens to Lion, they're done. I mean, Husso has not been as good this year, even when he was healthy. Maybe adding a veteran goalie, someone, I mean, I think who did it last year? Was it the Knights, the Golden Knights, who signed Jonathan Quick, I think, and, you know, kind of a veteran presence just there to help, you know, seen a lot of action. He's won some cups, you know, that doesn't hurt. I don't know if there's an equivalent out there that you could do, a Fleury or someone like that, but just something that might help this team. But this isn't the year. Now, the Lions are a different story. They're there, but they're a player away, but the Wings probably aren't. But I just wouldn't mind seeing a little bit, something of an upgrade on defense.
Well, I mean, that's going to cost you if it's somebody who's going to come in and make an impact. And I would agree. I don't think this is their year. You know, I mean, it was after the Jared Goff chance Tuesday's game, they did segue to "We want the cup." So, you know, it's when you see when your home team is up by 4 or 5 goals, you can start getting creative and hopeful with a chance. But you know, if they get in, it's great, and then anything can happen. You know, a goaltender gets hot, that can be the difference maker. But you know, going out and getting another goalie, I mean, you can say that about every single team. If their number one guy gets hurt, that's tough to overcome. You know, that's. I mean, there's only so much you can do to offset that. And to be fair, I mean, Reimer has been good. He was very good in Toronto. You know, he's played well. So when he's needed here in the second half, and he had a good start to the season. So, you know, there are other teams looking for goaltending help. I just think this is a time of year where prices are so high because teams that have, you know, stronger expectations of going on a run or going on a long run are willing to pay premium prices like the Wings did 20 years ago, you know, when they were that team. So I mean, Steve, most of all, you know, keeps his eye on the big picture and to sacrifice something big in the present just in the hopes that maybe they can win a series or two. I mean, it'll be a successful season, you know, when they get into the playoffs. I mean, they haven't had the same draft lottery luck as Ottawa and Buffalo, and yet Buffalo and Ottawa aren't projected to miss the playoffs again. And Detroit, which, you know, has had no luck in the draft lottery, looks like they're going to certainly are on solid footing to advance, to make the playoffs. So that in and of itself is their success story right there.
Well, they found some good players for sure. And getting back to Patrick Kane for a second, and to Carl's point about Fabry. So Kane, and then also signing DeBrincat, it has allowed people to move down a little bit. So Lucas Raymond's on the second line and flourishing, and it just pushes everybody down. And Fabry's playing against other fourth line guys. It's just, right? I mean, it's like in any other, well, maybe not football, because you always have for the most part, you have your starters out there. But when you get guys that are playing in a role that's a little bit more suited, and they're playing against similar competition at the same time on the ice, I would imagine that has something to do with it too. Do you see that those two guys have allowed the domino effect? Because Raymond was probably going to get better anyway, right? He's young, he's improving, but he's flourishing. For example,
and you can move guys around if they're hot, if they're cold, and you have enough players to have two really, really solid power play units. But I think the guy who probably has benefited the most from all these signings is Dylan Larkin, because it's taken so much pressure off him. I mean, he was the guy they needed to score in order to have a chance just a few years ago. And now, it wasn't that he scores, but the last goal against the Capitals, I mean, everybody else had already poured it on. So I think for him, it's just taking so much pressure off of him. And you see the assets they have too when they're on the road and can't get the matchups they want. They can move a big guy like Michael Rasmussen up to play on the first line. There's so many options for Derek Lalonde and his staff in coming up with lines, and they do a good job of adjusting, and I mean, the amount of people they can have on when they need a goal, as they did in Chicago, it's a situation they haven't been in, even, I mean, last year after the team was kind of gutted after the deadline, it was just a slow crawl, miserable crawl to the finish line. But this year, the depth, Tuesday's game against the Capitals was just a perfect example. I mean, it was Shane Gostisbehere and Joe Veleno that kind of were the standouts early on, and then the goals just kept pouring in.
Yeah, they're, especially offensively. I mean, we saw, they have been moving guys around, and that's a credit to Lalonde, to understanding, who's working best and not afraid to try things, and taking, Raymond off the first line and all that stuff. And, I wonder, are there guys on offense, since they seem to have a boatload or whatever of extra capital on offense, could you move somebody, and sign maybe a defenseman, trade for one, and, potentially sign them to an extension, somebody who's on expiring contract? I'm not sure which guys. I don't know if Perron was on that
Perron's
list. Maybe
one of them. I mean, Patrick Kane, obviously, but you don't want to, you want to extend him.
You get rid of Patrick Kane, and Shawn's going to be picking him down there.
You said guys who aren't expiring. I mean, but even Perron, I mean, like, he takes penalties that sometimes, you just wonder, or it's too bad, but he brings so much positive emotion and energy, and he drew a penalty against the Capitals and had a couple of assists. I mean, he's still, and he's a cup champion. So,
Lalonde loves him, right? He calls him the most competitive player on the team.
Yeah. To me, it goes back to, do you really want to mess with his chemistry? I mean, David Perron is very well liked in the room, and, to trade a guy, and you're not going to get a game-changing defenseman for him. You're not going to get, a Noah Hannafin type for him at all. So, Again, why are you doing that? I mean, that's just seems almost like making a trade. They're not in the position of, last year they had to trade Tyler Bertuzzi because otherwise they were going to lose him for nothing in free agency. But David Perron, unlikely that he comes back, but he's not somebody who you stand to lose anything with if you don't trade. He's not a pending UFA that you have to trade in order to get assets, because he's not going to bring in the kind of assets they got, from Tyler for the Tyler Bertuzzi trade last year. So,
if you're Yzerman, though, aren't you looking? I mean, he's a third line, guy. You're going to lose him. Would it be the end of the world for Yzerman to flip him for some draft capital and then flip that for something else? That wouldn't be the work. I mean, it seems weird for them to think about.
So who are you plugging in? Who are you plugging in there? I mean, who are you plugging in there? And he's a power play guy. I mean, he's a very good power play guy. and he's played in the top 6 as well. So,
Yeah, move Fabry up or Sprong or somebody.
Yeah, but they're already on the power play as well. I just don't think you're going to get anything for him in return that's going to replace what he brings. And again, you're messing with chemistry in the room, and to me, that's not. We'll see, but that's not a trade that I think would be worth making. Would bring in a reward that was worth. But what you're taking away from the team and moving him out. Just they have. You can't just think of it as like, oh well, they need draft picks, so trade what's been working. Right now this is working, and there's still Steve has not at any point mortgaged the future. All the contracts are reasonable, and he still has a good deal of draft capital. So I don't think they're in a position where they need to make that kind of move.
Not only that particular line has got a little bit of physicality too, right? There's some toughness to that line, to your point, and with Kopp and Valeno, why would you want to mess that up a little bit? But let me ask you this before we let you go, Helene. And I've heard this. You've been around town for a long, long time. You've covered the Wings for a long, long time. When was the last time you felt the buzz a little bit? I hear more and more. I've heard, especially the last couple of weeks. Hey, did you see the Wings game last night? Hey, what happened to the Wings game? Just from people that like hockey but maybe aren't hardcore hockey fans. And I haven't heard that in a long, long time. And I'm not even sure that the end of the playoff run that there was the buzz like this, right? Because it's one thing when a team's been at the edge of a run, another thing when they haven't been good for a while and they're on the come up. I'm just curious, when did the last time it felt like this to you?
No, that's a good question, because I agree. They're at the end of that playoff streak. It's really just them hanging on and managing to get in and hoping then that anything can happen. But, Nicholas Lidstrom had retired, Sederberg and Cronwell were, at the end of their career. Datsuk had left. So this kind of enthusiasm, and they haven't had a star like Patrick Kane in ages. So to me, you definitely have to go back a while since there's been, and I think people are excited. First chance of playoffs at Little Caesars Arena that is just, and there's so much, like more than anything, there's so much more fun to watch this season. They were just dreadful even a few years ago, and the way they had to finish last season. But this year there's so much fun. They're the ones who are scoring on teams to go up 2-3 goals 5-6 minutes into a game, and even when they're down, rarely, the blowout in Edmonton, it was a one-off. It wasn't like part of a trend. So I just think they're so much more fun. There's so much more star power. You see the enthusiasm Kane has when he scores. Jake Wallman with his performance when he scores. So you just, they're much more fun, and they look like, this is a team that added the right veterans to get them where they are, but they also have a really good young core that gives hope that, this is going to be part of a trend now, the start of a new playoff streak.
Carlos, anything before we let our realist hockey writer go?
No, Shawn will just see you on the road for the playoffs. That's the next time you'll see him, Helena.
Well, I think so. We just agree.
No.
They signed Cindy Crawford, and that's it, because she's a free agent. So that's the best kind of move. You sign people who you don't even have to give up anything to.
Yeah,
you can cost them anything.
She was a Pepsi person. I'm a Coke person. That's fine. And no, I will not be on the road in the playoffs unless they win a series. Then maybe the second round, but probably not even that. But we'll see.
I'll bet you they're going to put. That's the kind of motivation that teams look for. Columnist says, I may travel to see you play.
Carlos, no. I'm sorry. That I wasn't clear. Carlos, as a columnist, will be on the first round on the road. That's established. But I don't. Okay. But they've got to win a series, and they got to see how that all plays out to justify 2 on the road. Okay. So I won't go unless they win a series, maybe 2 series. But I'll be at the home games, and in fact, I'll see you Saturday. I'll be there this coming Saturday.
Yeah, big game, divisional
Florida.
Florida.
Absolutely. I'll see you Saturday. So Carlos, no more questions for
The only question I have is, how is Helene's book On the Clock? Hang on, I got to take a breather. That's a long title. On the Clock: Behind the Scenes with the Detroit Red Wings at the NHL Draft. How is that doing, and how can we get it?
It's available in bookstores and online, and if people want, they can also email me at hstjames@freepress.com. My email is in all of my stories for that, or, the history of the Wings, the Big 50, the men moments, in parentheses, women who made the Detroit Red Wings. So yeah, both books are doing very, very well. And the draft book certainly details, it's so exciting this spring to see how far they've come, right? But Steve Yzerman would be the first to tell you, drafted in 83, didn't win a cup till 97. And along the way, they had the 89 draft with Lidstrom and Fedorov and Konstantinov. So for them to be where they are today without having had any kind of draft like that really is remarkable. And it's, I think, a huge, huge credit. Steve Yzerman, it's been 5 years, and he just has transformed the teams through without a lot of luck. He's made great draft picks, but, without ever getting to pick first, second, or third, and making some extremely savvy signings. So,
well, thanks again for joining us. It's always good to have you. We will definitely talk to you. Let's talk before the playoffs start for sure. Again, if that's all right with you. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Elliot. Thanks for joining us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more Free Press Sports and Carlos and Shawn to talk about Carlos's Lions. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. All right, Carlos, the Lions, the NFL Combine's going on. It's the NFL offseason that never stops, as you like to say. Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are in lockstep that they want to keep building through the draft, although the NFL salary cap went an increase, largest increase in the history of the league by, I want to say, $30 million or so. And Holmes did leave a little opening that maybe he could consider, they could consider going out and getting a splashier name. But anyway, I know we got the draft. If we got free agency first, where do you fall in all of this, and what you think that they should do, and tell Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell what to do? What would you tell them?
Well, I just want to know, are you heading to the airport, or am I heading to the airport to pick up Chris Jones? Who is it going to be? What do you think? Who?
I don't think they're going to get, Kansas City might franchise him. I don't know that they're going to get him at all. I'd be surprised that they'd even go after him, wouldn't you?
I would. Everything that he has said from the end of the season, has been, just don't, it's easy to win March or whatever, or free agency and blah, blah, blah. We want to draft and develop and re-sign our own guys and all this stuff. And, the difference, I think, is, that is a good philosophy for sure. However, you are one player away now, the proverbial one player away. You were one player away in San Francisco in that second half. Someone like a Chris Jones, an elite player. Lee McNeil is a very good player, but he's not Aiden Hutchinson. You need somebody to help there. Probably on the defensive line, you're picking 29th. Unless you're going to move up, it's going to be really hard to find a blue chip type, impact player right away this year. You need help in the secondary. And I'm getting the sense from Brad Holmes that something is up with the secondary and it's true, these guys, the cornerbacks get hurt all the time. So maybe it's not the wisest thing to try to draft really high or sign a high priced free agent. He's signed a lot of guys to 1-year deals in the secondary, but they need something. They need something on defense. They fired half their defensive staff. It seems like, there's been a lot of turnover. So something clearly is not right with the defense that they're not happy with. And if they want to blame it all on the coaches, maybe that's what they want to do. Maybe Brad's saying, hey, I got you everything you needed. You had every single player to get to the Super Bowl and win it. If he believes that, then he's going to keep doing the same thing. But I think I would like them to make some significant move in free agency for a serious upgrade. Whether that's Chris Jones, I doubt it, because they're going to have to pay Jared Goff. But with the cap going up, you can do a lot of things. They have a lot of cap room. So what do you think? I think this is, it seemed like Dan Campbell's breathing a sigh of relief that his his coordinators, specifically Ben Johnson, are back this year, how long is that going to keep happening? This is their time, I think.
Well, he talked about, it's funny because you and I always talk about this with Ben Johnson. He was talking about it from Indy the other day that Ben Johnson is at the point where he knows what Campbell wants. So this is still Campbell's show. He also talked about Glenn and the continuity and said, hey, he just likened it to having the players come back and the continuity there. And I'm sure that makes a difference. He replaced the defensive line coach, so maybe they feel like they can, he did that with the secondaries coach. When was that? 2 years ago? It's all running together now, but maybe that'll make a little bit of a difference in the defensive line. I'm always leery of one player away in football unless it's a quarterback. But, sometimes it does make a difference. I don't know. San Francisco went out and got Chase Young, and what did he do? He wasn't the reason that they beat the Lions. That's for sure.
He helped.
Yeah, but are they one player away or are they a couple plays away? I mean, they don't fumble the ball. Maybe they win that game. It starts.
Yeah, but who makes plays?
Momentum.
Players make plays. I mean, it's always
for sure.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, the one player away thing is people don't like it because you think it's Superman. Like Superman is coming down from the heavens and making 14 plays in a row. Like, no, it's the little things. Because like you just said with the Red Wings, they've taken pressure off Dylan Larkin. That's what Helene was getting at. Is you add talent, it helps everybody else throughout the roster.
No, for sure. And the Wings fans love getting to Brinkett, but Kane, even at 35, I mean, he may not be, he's not an in-prime superstar, but just everything that he brings. No, for sure. I think they could use a few guys. I mean, is Chris Jones enough? Maybe. But with that secondary, I think they need to put somebody in the secondary as well. And that's the thing. It's just, Here's the thing, and this is what's going to really be interesting this next year and the next couple of years, is there's an idea in the NFL that the window is short, and generally that's true. But there are a handful of programs out there, franchises. I got to get my head out of college basketball. There are a handful of franchises out there that are good year in and year out. They compete year in and year out. Now, the top ones have Patrick Mahomes or had Tom Brady or whatever, but there's still some franchises that are relevant and competitive for year after year after year, and maybe not Super Bowl runs, but I mean the Steelers were for a long time. Whatever the Seattle had a nice run there for a while. Now they had Russell Wilson, but I think that's what they're trying to build, and that's what they believe in. Can they put together something that's sustainable even after Goff goes, whatever? And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but what makes me curious, Carlos, I want to know what you think, is how patient the fan base is going to be if that is going to remain their philosophy, because they probably don't think they're just one player away. And I agree, they're at least two. They need somebody up front and somebody in the back. Do they need superstars there? I don't know. This is what I try to lay out in my column. If you all right, I think about that San Francisco game, for example. Yes, having another edge rusher or rush from anywhere, maybe it's another defensive tackle next to McNeil who's really good at collapsing the pocket. That would make it, in some ways, a bigger difference. But let's just say Jack Campbell, and I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but let's just say he gets better at diagnosing what's happening and can start taking advantage of his really, really high-end athleticism at that position. If he starts getting a better feel and can use that range and speed he's got, which he really couldn't this past year as a rookie, does he get out and tackle Brock Purdy when he's scrambling at 4 or 5 yards instead of a 10? It's little things like that. Or how much better is Brian Branch gonna get? And will that make a difference? I know the safeties, you can only do so much. You still got to cover on the outside. Can McNeil get better? Can Hutchinson take the kind of, I'm not saying he'll ever be Chris Jones, but Chris Jones made his leap from his second to third year and became dominant. Does Hutchinson have that in him? I don't know if he does. But my guess is they're banking on at least some of their guys taking a leap. And if they do, can they get a little bit better defensively? Can they get down into the area where you can win a Super Bowl? You don't have to be a top 5 defense to win a Super Bowl. At least not according to the last 6 years. But will fans put up with that? Will they be patient with that?
I think that, one of the things that people weren't happy about that, they were still talking about rightfully when they lost to San Francisco was, you didn't make a single move at the trade deadline when you could have. You knew what you were tracking toward. You knew that you were going to make the playoffs. You were going to probably win the division. You could have made an upgrade. You could have had an upgrade, something, right? And they didn't. I don't understand that still. And this is what you're talking about is, I mean, when you're laying this all out, they're banking on this. If Campbell does this, if that, it's uncertain. And this is something that Yzerman talks about all the time. Hockey's different, but when he talks about draft picks, he basically says if it's not one of the top 2 or 3 guys, it's just a guessing game, and he considers draft capital in a way as, exactly that capital that he can flip to sign free agents who have done it.
But it's not draft capital, right, Carlos? It's guys in their roster. And it's the same with Yzerman. Yzerman is betting on the guys in his system. He's already got in his system. They're going to get better.
I'm just talking about for the draft specifically is like he uses that because he talks about free agents and that free agents, he likes signing free agents and he likes the idea of free agents because there's no guess. They are who they are. They know. And this is the thing that, I mean, Campbell talked about this, about free agency and the combine. And he was saying, you sign a guy, you draft him, you know who he is. You bring in a guy from outside. I have to know every single thing about him. It's really hard to suss that out with a veteran who's not in your room. You can do all the work you can, all the whatever, but it's really hard to figure guys out, figure people out. How are they going to fit in your locker room? How's the culture, this and that? That's why in the NFL, what do you see all the time? They sign their old players. I coached in New Orleans. I'm going to sign all the players from New Orleans that I knew. It's very incestuous that way. The coaches, I worked with this guy, I'm hiring this guy. They don't want to wonder or guess or whatever. It's always a connection that they have to these guys. So there's uncertainty there. I get it. But, this year, if they don't make a significant upgrade on the defensive line or in the secondary, and they don't get to the NFC title game again, or they stumble or whatever, because of those issues, because of the pressure that, not generating pressure up front and, being able to cover in the back end, people are going to be unhappy. They're going to say, well, this is your chance. And right now, because of the way they're picking, and that can change, they can, move up in the draft and whatever, who knows. But right now they're picking in the late first round and late in the second round. That's hard to find, gems there.
But that's what you've got to do to win. You do. Kansas City found Jones in the second round. L'Jarius Sneed, who's their stud cornerback, who's also about to be, he's a 4th rounder. Now, look, I get it. That's really hard to do, but that's what the top teams do, though. That's how you win. And I'm with you. Here's the thing about football that makes it different. It's not like baseball or maybe even hockey. Maybe hockey's somewhere in between. But to me, so you're right. Campbell's talking about why he wants knowing the players, because he's a coach and he's thinking about the chemistry and the locker room, and chemistry matters a ton in football. Brett Holmes is, yes, he agrees with that, but he's been talking, if you listen to his words, he's talking about the math. All right, fine. And I went and looked through this the last couple of days about how many free agent signings your team, how many expensive free agent signings have worked out. You'd be amazed at how many don't. You know why? Injury. Now, sometimes the production falls off. Chris Jones is 30 years old. How much longer is he going to play at this level? That's a hard position to keep playing at that level. I don't know. But it's reasonable to assume he's not going to be playing at that level that much longer. But the injury part of it.
But how long is their window? How long?
If they think they're Pittsburgh, then they think they're building something that's going to last, where they're going to have a shot every few years for 10 years. I mean, or if they think they're going to build what San Francisco's building, they're not built around Mahomes. I mean, I get it. You got outliers. You get Kansas City with Mahomes. You get New England with Tom Brady. But there are other examples of franchises that have been good to really good to occasionally great for a long period of time. That's what they're trying to do. I'm with you. I don't think the fans will be patient next year. But there's no guarantee. The assumption that you go make these signings leads to a Super Bowl win is just not true. That's a risk as well. Partly because of injury, partly because you don't know if they're going to be as good, the production, the system, whatever. It's just free agency in football is not the slam bang thing. It is like you bring in a 30 home run guy who's 27 years old in baseball, you can be reasonably safe he's going to hit 30 more home runs the next year, right? But in football, because of the physical and violent nature of it, it's just the free agents busts are out there more than you think.
Yeah, I mean, and Holmes has had plenty of his own, in the receiver market, in the secondary.
Is Mosley, right?
Right.
I mean, C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, and even a lot of people say Cam Sutton. Actually, that the thing is, if not now, when? You are there. You were, what was it, 4 points away from getting to the Super Bowl. You were, well, to tie probably, 4 to win, but yeah, Campbell wouldn't have tied, by the way. He would have gone for 2 no matter what. But yeah, you couldn't hold a 17-point lead in the second half. You fired half your defensive staff. The markers are there to tell you what they know what the problems are, and they know that what they need, to fix it. So they've had 1.5 good years. This is I have agreed with what they've done to get to this point, how they've built it, even when they only won 3 games in the first year and all that. They've done a lot of great stuff, and I approve of all that. I have applauded them for it. It's been great. But now things are a little bit different. You're not building, you're not drafting the same way that you should have been the first 2 years. You've built the team now. You have the core. You have some really, really good players. You know who your quarterback is. All these different things, right? Now you need to think a little bit differently. You can't be applying, I think, the same logic right now. And yeah, every NFL team probably thinks, we're going to, once they have, some pretty good success, this is going to continue unabated for years and years, and it doesn't happen most of the time, for different reasons. So they need to me, when you have a chance to win, and especially this franchise that hasn't had a lot of chances to win at this level, you got to take it. You got to seize it. You got to, because building responsibly and building through the draft, that all sounds really good. It feels good to do that.
Oh, but it's what they've done.
Yeah. Do you want to win, or do you want to win your way? Are you going to be, sort of shackled by your own, method of, we have to stick to this. We have to, look, sometimes you got to take a little bit of a chance, Dave Burkett likes to say, scared money don't make money, and you got to take some chances sometimes. I don't know why they didn't at the trade deadline. And if they're just going to hope that the 29th pick, whatever, is going to be enough of a difference maker and bring in a couple of free agents, some moderate guys, not spend all the money in the cap. I don't know. If maybe they know something that, we don't know or we don't see or whatever. And that's another thing. They have a new defensive line coach. What does that guy want? What does he need? What has he been told about resources that you're going to have? So I think you need help on defense, and the easiest way to get that is in free agency. But if there's guys they don't agree with, they don't mesh with, they don't see, Chris Jones, maybe they don't hear great things about him and he's not going to fit here, whatever. I understand that. The problem is that's never broadcast. It's always maybe reported afterward that, came in for a meeting, whatever, but
yeah,
I
just think, to me, I would understand if they went and tried to get a good, I don't think they need a superstar, but they need a good cornerback. I don't think they may not need any help on the line. We'll see what Hutchinson becomes. Jones was the best. That Kansas City line wasn't stacked. Meanwhile, the 49ers had Bosa and they hired Chase Young. What the Lions do to them? They tore that defense up. They had a couple of drops, so they would have scored close to 40 points. So, what are we talking about here, right? The Kansas City defense had a great secondary, good linebackers, and they have the best pass rusher in the league. You could argue Bosa, but I think when that pressure comes up from the middle, that's just different. So short of him, what are we talking about? I'm with you. I'd be shocked if they didn't go sign a defensive lineman. But to me, they could use a corner, and then Sutton's your number 2, and then maybe he's okay or at least solid guarding the number 2 receiver or the number 3 receiver or whatever. We're talking about Kane. That would help Sutton. We're talking about the domino effect of Patrick Kane. I don't think it's about methodology. I think that what they believe is that they got 3 or 4 guys on defense who are really young, who have the chance to be really, really good. And if they improve, that alone will make their defense better. And then what are we talking about? I don't know. It's hard to know. But going and signing a big free agent is not a guarantee in a squad, or San Francisco would have a Super Bowl by now. It's just not.
It's not a guarantee, but you can. It's a way to help your team, I think, and it's also
it's a way to try to help your team.
Yeah, you try. Nothing's certain in anything in the draft, and why even try then? Why just give up? Everything's a crapshoot. But at least it tells you the two things, and I think this is, like you said with the fan base, and this is part of what Holmes' message was. I think in the end of the year was, hey, don't believe the headlines and don't believe the hype and all the whatever. We know what we're doing. Don't question us because we know what we're doing. You're maybe not going to be super happy with what we do in free agency, but just be patient. We've done it.
That's the key. That's the word right there.
Don't question us. Patient. And it's like, all right,
question him. I don't think they care if you question him. He's asking the fan base for some trust and some patience, right? Some patience, and we'll see.
I think he's asking a lot because you said now the bar is high. Things change. It's not just the same, let's just get to the playoffs.
There's no question.
And especially, Green Bay talking smack, there's going to be, the bar is considerably higher. You put yourself there, you've earned it, you deserve it. And now you have to, the little things are going to make differences. And that's one player maybe here or there, but part of it too is, and I don't know if they think this way, maybe, but the optics of it is, at least does it look like you're trying to do something? Maybe you could have signed Chase Young and maybe he wouldn't have been the difference maker, but you could have said, hey, we tried to do something to help ourselves, give ourselves the best chance. And people, I think, would be happier with that or better with that, but doing nothing.
They would be, but they're not on the inside, or they wouldn't understand. I mean, they looked at Chase Young and said, we don't think he's going to make the difference. And he didn't. And at least for San Francisco, and that was with Bosa. He sure didn't do anything against the Lions. I don't know. I mean, whatever. I don't want to get hung up on Chase Young. I'm with you. They need hate to say upgrades, but I guess that's the fairest way to say it, right? They need more talent on the defensive line and in the secondary, and the cornerback in particular. That safeties have a chance to be really good. I think they're fine there, right? But their cornerbacks, yeah, they got to get better there. And they got to get better on the D-line, and we'll see what they do. I don't agree that they need superstar talent there. I think they got some promising young guys, and if they just go get good players, that might be enough. We'll see.
Yeah, but there's no guarantee that they're good. There's no more guarantee that you're going to find a good player, in free agency or the draft or develop guys than there is that you're going to sign a really good high-priced free agent. I mean, there's no guarantee either way.
No, there's not, but there's less financial risk with trying to find a good one instead of a superstar. So that
who cares about financial risk? Who cares? The cap's gone up. They got plenty of cap space, and this is their window right now. They're right in the window.
No, but that's their point. Their point is no, they don't want to just win. They want to build out longer. They've looked around. Other NFL teams have done it. That's what they're doing. You can disagree with that. You can say, okay, hey, no, go put all your marbles in right now and don't think about anything else. And I understand the fans would for sure want that. And I understand maybe somebody like you wants that. I like the long view. I think it's interesting that the way they're trying to do it. They've looked around and they want to be relevant for a decade. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, how about 2 years? How about 2 straight years you're relevant? How about let's start with that, and then you can think about being the Seahawks and the Steelers and the Patriots. I mean, come on. I mean,
yeah, but those teams built that way too. That's the point. They built that way too. They also
added free agents too.
No, for sure they did. For sure they did. But the Steelers have never gone out and gotten a super high $40 million free or $30 million free agent. They've never done that. I'm trying to think. I don't even know if Seattle's done that. But I know Pittsburgh's not done that, and I know that's one of their models. They don't believe in it. New England did that with the cornerback one year. What was his name?
Darrelle Revis.
Yeah, who was the best cornerback in the league one year.
They did it with Randy Moss, too. They did it. I mean, they've done it.
They didn't do it. Moss was not that high price at that. He was trying to rehabilitate his career. What are you talking about? They took that kind of risk. That was different. But yeah,
whatever, however you have to do it. I mean, adding players, you don't have to, there's not one way to do it. You don't have to do it the Patriot way. You don't have to do it Pittsburgh's way. You don't. And by the way, Pittsburgh right now, it's like, yeah, they probably need to think about, they probably wish they would have signed a high profile quarterback or something.
They need a quarterback. Yeah, they need a quarterback.
They've been they've been struggling for years, so, yeah, keep doing it the Patriot way. Now their coaches maybe out the door, like people have been wondering about Tomlin, and sometimes things run their course, it's time
but it was
to
a
change.
15 year, for sure, but that was a 15-year one, whatever.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I just
because you had a great quarterback.
He was really good, he was really good. Goff's pretty good too. He's not Mahomes. Roethlisberger wasn't Manning and Brady, but he was really good. He was a step below, but man, he can make plays. No, for sure. For sure. Look, anyway, I get it. Fans are going to get impatient if it doesn't, I don't know, even if they bring in free agents and they don't get back to the NFC title game next year and the free agents are good and you lose at the end of the game, whatever, the ball's tipped, goes the wrong way, they're going to be frustrated. It's football. So, all right, we need to mention, I shouldn't say we need to mention, I want to mention, let's give a plug here on the Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn show. A series that's running in our paper right now that was written by our colleague Jeff Seidel about a gal, I want to say from the west side of the state. Is it Amity? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. It's Amity Dewey, who was shot in the face by her stepfather, and his stepfather then shot her mother and killed her mother and then killed himself. It was a murder-suicide. But the story is about her reconstruction surgery and her kind of putting her life back together and just the cost of gun violence. And it's told in a really, really compelling way. It's not an easy read. I've not read all of it because as we were recording, I think 3, maybe 4 are out, and I've read the first 3. But Carl, it's just, we're talking about newspapers and resources and how much they matter, and then you see a really important investigation. Phoebe Hall-Howard had a really good piece looking at some issues with Ford and recalls and some mistakes they were making. I want to just say last week, it was a really important investigation that matters to the public. So we're still doing, it's, to me, newspapers still matter. Obviously, I know you think that. You see that level of work. Phoebe spent a lot of time on that. Jeff spent all summer reporting last year, and then he's got to do his regular job as a columnist and put this together. But I just wanted to encourage you to go read that. It's not an easy read. It's a tough read, but I think, and this is the last thing I'm going to say about it, Carlos. I think what I've really appreciated is in the past, I think newspapers sometimes got too wrapped up in their own. It's funny, we're talking about the way the lines are building and, hey, don't get lost in your own pride or whatever, right? I think we used to do that as newspapers with investigations, and we'd roll out 100 inches a day or something on maybe sometimes an investigation, maybe sometimes it was a narrative story. It was too much. This story from Jeff, it's a long story, but the day-to-day are fairly short. It's maybe the first couple are really tight, and it leaves you kind of wanting more. And I think a lot of readers have responded that way. But I thought that was really clever to break it up that way and a little not digestible, but tight little taut pieces spread out over 5 days instead of just bombarding readers with all this information. You remember when we used to do that all the time? So I thought that was really smart and clever. In any case, all right, let's take one more quick break, and we'll come back with Carlson's favorite thing. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlson Show. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlson Shawn. Let me just one quick add to the plug for Jeff's story. The story's going to run its entirety this Sunday, and there's going to be a digital component, the audio component, online, of him kind of some 911 calls, some sheriff's crime scene descriptions, and then Jeff kind of talking about why he did the story and how it unfolded and how he found the story, stuff like that. So again, check that out. I would say check the Free Press out every day. There's terrific stuff. It's on a lighter note. I don't know if Carlos, did you read? Maybe you didn't. I don't want to put you on the spot, but John Carlisle wrote a story about one of the last dime stores in the state.
Dime in Marysville, up in the Thumb.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, that dropped on the same day as Jeff's. So, something a little bit lighter about cultural changes and so on and so forth. And I know people were really interested in that too. So, yeah, the Free Press still has some good stuff. Right, Carlos?
Absolutely. It's definitely worth your time and to subscribe and to pick up a paper copy. So I still see them in my neighborhood. I'm walking around. People have them on the doorsteps and the Sunday paper and the daily paper, home delivery Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. So it is definitely worth your time.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it's obviously worth your time to listen to Carlos, to read Carlos, of course, but to listen to him when it's time for his favorite thing. What you got? We do this kind of every year. We try to, make an effort to see the Oscar-nominated movies, and I don't put a lot of stock in the whole, let's grade art, let's give it a number or an award. I don't really like the whole thing, but I'm also an American, and I grew up in LA, so that means my life was a lot about watching movies and appreciating the medium. So we always try to get out and watch some of those. So my wife and I have been we've been going to the theater to watch some of the nominations, and so I've just been enjoying that. A few weeks ago we saw American Fiction, which I really enjoy, with Jeffrey Wright. He's nominated. Really good movie, makes you think at the end. And then we watched Poor Things, which I don't think belongs in the conversation. It got great reviews, and it's nominated, kind of a retelling on the Frankenstein trope thing. Some interesting points, but really had a hard time watching that movie. But it's always fun to kind of pick those things apart after and talk about them, whether you enjoyed them or you didn't. But just a little time with my wife going to the old school theater and sitting down and watching on the big screen has been fun. Well, that sounds great. That is fun. I've used to do that a little bit. Why don't you come out to Ann Arbor, come to the Michigan Theater, and watch the Oscar shorts?
Oh, okay. Yeah, they've done that at the DIA in the past, the animated shorts.
Right.
I think it was.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. All right, my favorite thing is very quick. I was at Joe Louis. Listen to me. I was at Little Caesars. Joe Louis is back.
That tells you everything.
No, it does. It does. I was at Little Caesars last weekend, I want to say, and it's the first time I've been there this year for a hockey game, and part of it's that the Wings are rolling, they're fun, but I forget sometimes just how great live hockey is, and I've enjoyed kind of getting to know the team a little bit and studying up, and the game it's funny, Carlos, because when I was around the team all the time, the game has changed like every other game, and it just got me to think about it. Even you think about, where's all this time going? God, you think about your age and just how quickly everything goes, but it's funny that you can watch a hockey game and think, God, I remember when I watched the Wings all the time, they had a player, you remember him, Darren Hell, who was not much of a stick handler, was okay with the puck, whatever, didn't necessarily change direction all that great, but man, he was a burner. He was fast. He was one of the fastest skaters in the league, and he was known for that. He was known for his speed, even though he was way down on the line on those cup teams. Now every team has several guys that skate like that, and that wasn't that long ago, and it's just the evolution, and it was just fun to watch. It happens in every sport. The longer we're alive, the more we see our sports get faster, become more skilled, they change. Obviously the changes in baseball all over the place, but I was like, oh my God, this is not quite the same sport I used to watch. You got to win a little bit differently now. You can't just dump the puck in and hide like the Devils used to do. Oh my God. And back when hockey was becoming, sliding off the national radar a little bit because it was all just mucky and everybody's grabbing and grinding and all that. Anyway, that was fun. That was by far my favorite thing.
Good. Yeah, that's you should see more of it. You will be seeing more of it, I'm sure.
I will. And my goal is to see a game with you, mostly so we can huddle up and keep each other warm, because it's cold up in that gondola.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Before they were winning as much and there weren't as many people coming, it was a lot colder. I'd have to wear a turtleneck and my heavy winter jacket, and I'd still be cold. And Helene would wear gloves up there, and Helena would be like, "Oh, you soft, football writers or whatever." And
no, it's cold, man. It's cold up there. All right, who do we need to thank, Carlos? We got to get out of here.
Yeah, let's thank our intrepid producer Robin Chan. And our executive producers, Kirkland Crawford and Anjanette Delgado. And mostly, well, not mostly, but right at the top of the chart, the org chart, is Nicole Avery Nichols, our editor. But Shawn, the most important person, always. Who?
You, of course. This podcast doesn't happen without you. That's why it says Carlos, and then the ampersand, and then Shawn. That's how it should be. That's how it should be. No, the readers. Excuse me, the readers, the listeners. Maybe, hopefully, some of them are readers. The listeners, we want to thank you, and thanks for staying with us every week. Obviously, the show's not here without y'all, and you can find find this podcast wherever you find your favorite podcast. The main thing, though, is to subscribe. Give us a shout when you're there. Tell us what you think. Carlos, until next week, it'll probably be all lines again, right? Because that's how this is.
Probably.
It'll be too close to the draft. We'll have to talk about the draft. I don't know. No, we got lots of stuff to talk about, including a baseball team out there we should probably mention at some point. All right, Carlos, always a pleasure, and we'll be back here next week with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.